And there it is, straight like that, man. Welcome to another episode of the Ultimate 216 Show. I'm your boy, Earl of Pearl, man. Y'all know the vibes. If you woke up this morning, you already won. I hope you have done something that by now your future self will thank you for. Coming up in mere minutes, we got Daniel Oyefusi of ESPN that covers the Cleveland Browns. He's going to join us, and we're going to have a conversation about some of what the players had to say today in open locker room, about the Cleveland Browns offense and what his expectations is for the Cleveland Browns against the Green Bay Packers this Sunday at Huntington Bank Field. But first, it's a good time to let you know that this episode of the Ultimate 216 Show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you are ready for kickoff with can't-miss offers. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I like using the FanDuel app because I like putting in anytime touchdowns. Shout out to the anytime touchdowns, man. It's always a nice way to make some easy money. So if you are ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com/UCSS to get started. That's FanDuel.com/UCSS to get started. And without further ado, it's time to bring in my man, Daniel Oyefusi. Man, you see him, Cleveland Browns reporter for ESPN. Previously of the Miami Herald and the Baltimore Sun. You see his social media. That's where you can find him. Daniel, my guy, welcome to the show. How you feel?
I'm doing good, man. Appreciate you having me. It's always good to come on.
Absolutely, man. So let's get started with this because as I was, coming in and getting ready for this show, I was listening to the radio and Dawand Jones had some very, very interesting comments. I'm going to play this video that Daryl Ryder shot. Everybody knows Daryl from 92.3 The Fan. Shout out to Daryl. And it sounded like to me that what Kevin said and what Dawand said, it seemed like they speak in two different languages. For our audience who didn't hear it or don't know what we're talking about, Dawand Jones left the game on a few different occasions last Sunday, what it looked like to be dehydration, heat exhaustion, or camps or what have you. But the amount of time he was out of the game was very noticeable. Kevin was asked about it on two different occasions. He kind of doubled down today after he was asked about it after the game. But this is what Dawand Jones had to say when he was asked about that today.
I wasn't dehydrated. It was just coach's precaution to take me out. It was nothing, wrong with me. He just wanted to make sure I was okay for the rest of the game. Pretty similar, it's nothing different. College, I feel like we had way more plays. So, honestly, it was just up to Coach Stefanski. There's nothing I really can control. So.
Audio and video courtesy of 92.3 The Fan. Daniel, what was your thought process when you heard Dawand Jones kind of say something that was a little bit contradictory to what Kevin had to say?
Yeah, it was interesting comments because, after the game on Sunday, Stefanski said that with the Heat, they wanted to rotate him a couple series. I think he missed about 10 snaps. He missed all of one short drive. Mm-hmm. And then he, missed the first couple plays of another drive. And, when we looked on, we're like, is he in the medical tent? Is he was on there with his helmet on, or he had a helmet in his hand, like right on the sideline as if he was ready to go into the game. So, obviously, like with Dawand's weight in the past, like sometimes the heat has been an issue. He left practice in one training camp practice on the back of a cart or on the front of a cart because of the heat. So just naturally you're thinking, oh, maybe he's dealing with cramps. And I will say, I know a lot of fans are like, what cramps? What do you mean? Like, how hot was it in Baltimore? Like, it was like it got to mid 80s in Baltimore, and it was pretty humid. So like, I was on the field pregame. It was pretty hot. Obviously, these are professionals, and you'd like them to be, hydrated and have all the fluids in the system. But sometimes it happens, and we saw it with Denzel. But the weird thing about it was that like Dawand said that he didn't have any of those things. He wasn't cramping. He wasn't dehydrated. He didn't get any IVs. It seemed like you said, it was coach's precaution. So, like, it seems weird that you would take a guy out if, like, there was nothing wrong with him. Anything, like, precaution, maybe sometimes injury, you might limit a guy's snaps or whatever, but, with the Heat, I don't know. It was definitely strange. I've never seen anything like that happen before, honestly, like, that a guy is kind of rotated, and especially at a every down position like offensive tackle just because of the Heat. I haven't really heard anything like that again, but, I had to look at the weather forecast for this Sunday now in Cleveland just to make sure, like, hey, are we going to see this again? And it's like 81 degrees, a little humidity, are we going to see that again? We don't know. But definitely kind of strange development this past weekend.
Yeah, you mentioned like being at training camp, and early on in training camp, I was standing right there and I witnessed it. He was going through the motions of battling the heat. And that was to be expected because I believe it was the first training camp practice or the second training camp practice that this took place. Also noticed, can't remember what practice it was, but you and I were actually standing on the same field, and we seen Denzel Ward kind of off to the side, gathered around the DBs, and it looked like he was dealing with the same thing. Denzel dealt with the same thing this past week. He talked about it. You mentioned this Sunday's matchup against Green Bay. It's going to be 81, 82 degrees out there, high humidity. Not only that, the Browns are debuting these new, underdog helmets and uniforms. And
they are brown, they dark, so you're going to feel the heat a little bit more than usual. I don't know if they knew that it was still going to be in the 80s around this time of the year when they picked this game. But yeah, it's going to make for kind of an interesting wrinkle. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where like the Browns could have used Denzel out there, like without a doubt. Like Cam Mitchell was his replacement, and he gave up 3 touchdowns. Like they could have used him in a big time against the Ravens. Same thing with Dawand. Like they need him to be on the field every single play. Like they can't have him missing plays. And obviously, like Dawand said, everything was fine with him. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where you got to make sure that you're prepared to go the distance in these games.
Big facts, big facts. Before we get into the Cleveland Browns offense, Quinshon Judkins met with the NFL last week. He did play last Sunday. He actually started that game. I was one of the few people that kind of felt like that could be a possibility, especially seeing how the Browns running game was a week prior. Is there any update that you can give us as far as the timeline for the NFL to make a determination if Quinshon Judkins will be suspended or not?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to someone kind of in the know with the I won't say the ordeal, but the developments, and there really is no timeline. The league, like you said, the league interviewed him last week, and I kind of gave some context on Twitter. So actually, if you call it last week, just kind of how the deal goes. So like once they finish the investigation, and nobody really knows when that's going to happen. They'll either say that, hey, like we found that you have not violated the league's personal conduct policy, you're not going to be suspended, you're free to continue playing, or they'll share their discipline results, however games that may be, and after that, like the player alongside the NFLPA, the players union, they have the right to negotiate kind of a settlement with the league. Like we saw that with what was potentially going to happen with Rashee Rice, and they couldn't come to an agreement. So then I was going to go to the disciplinary officer, which Browns fans are very familiar with, to Robinson. So that process can take a little bit of time as well, the negotiation. And obviously, if that doesn't work out, then you kind of appeal it and you send it to the arbitrary officer. So there really is no timeline right now for a resolution. I will say it's very notable that the league hasn't, and they didn't place him on the commissioner's exempt list. Because if so, like they could have done that immediately after he signed and kept him from practicing or playing for the team. So I think that's notable. Now whether that means that he's not going to get suspended or not, I don't know. I really can't say. But no resolution right now. So he signed. He's with the team, and they'll continue moving forward until the league says otherwise.
What did you think of his performance last week, and do you expect more to be on his plate this week coming up against Green Bay?
I thought he looked good. I thought he showed, what he showed in the spring, before, the arrest and everything happened in June, which was, decisiveness, physicality, some explosion, the ability to cut and hit the hole. I thought that really, like, he really, I think that last drive was when we really saw, like, what he could be in this offense. When he had that 31-yard run, that's the only explosive run that the Browns have had through 2 weeks, and right now it's the longest play of the season for the Browns. So the physicality, the contact balance, being able to shed multiple defenders, that was really, really promising. And I think that kind of forecast, like that tone setting early down back, that he could be as kind of a Nick Chubb replacement. So 10 carries led the team, 61 rushing yards led the team. Now that he has a full week of practice under his belt, I'd only expect that workload to increase a little bit more as the season progresses, and start him with this Sunday versus the Packers.
Yeah, this Sunday against the Packers is going to be a huge game. Daniel, dating back to last year, man, I brought this up last Sunday on our post-game show. The Cleveland Browns now on an 8-game losing streak, 13 1-points a game in that losing streak. It's the longest active streak in the NFL. And you look at the Cleveland Browns offense, man, and it just looks stale. It looks stagnant. It lacks creativity, even with a new offensive coordinator. lacks explosion. It doesn't seem like anything about this offense gets fans excited or makes us believe that, our turning point is coming. Based on what you've seen, from the transition of whatever offense we finished the season with last year to what we're starting the season with this year, do you think the Browns can get this turned around? Is this offensive scheme salvageable in your opinion?
Well, I think if it is like the identity has to be the run game, and has to start with the offensive line. I think that when we talked about throughout the offseason and training camp, we talked about like getting back to the Kevin Stefanski offense. Like the foundation of that was being able to run the ball and operate play action off of that. And if the Browns can't run the ball consistently, effectively, this is not an offense that's built to drop back and throw the ball 45 times a game, which they've done in each of their first two games. Like, regardless of what we might think about Jerry Jeudy and Harold Fannin and David Njoku, like, they're not built to throw the ball. I mean, really, no NFL team is built to throw almost 50 times a game consistently. Like, bad things are going to happen when you ask your offensive lineman or pass protect like that. The thing about getting back to Stefanski's offense is that he has guys in place that have operated this scheme with success. But this offensive line is much older than it was, when he first arrived in 2020, and they had the most success with this offense. And even 2 years ago, in 2023, with Joe's first stint with the team, these guys are older. They've had more injuries, and I think it's very fair to ask whether they do have the horses up front. They have the personnel in place to operate this offense the way that they want to. Like, I think that as time goes on over the course of the season, they're going to kind of get more comfort and kind of get into a groove, because it does sometimes takes the offense to a little bit longer to get things going. I think Quinshon will help as well. But if they can't run the ball effectively, like what we've seen the first 2 weeks is what we're going to see the rest of the remaining 15 games. Like that, like you can't have Joe drop back that many times. He doesn't have the mobility. He's not going to be able to hold up. These guys aren't going to be able to pass block well enough against these pass rushers 50 times a game, and you expect to have success. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, when you talk about the Cleveland Browns offensive line, man, I couldn't agree more. Especially when you look at the interior, right? Wyatt Teller and Joe Bitonio, they make a lot of money at that guard position. And sometimes just looking back, I wonder if Andrew Berry kind of mismanaged his approach with the offensive line. And I know that's a struggle when you're trying to balance, okay, how long before I let this line get as old before I got to move on? And he tried to address that to his point. Zach Zinter really hasn't turned out to be much of anything right now. He's not even available because he's not healthy. And so you just look at it, Joe Bitonio, if he didn't come back and decided to play this year, I wonder what type of shape we would be in. But quite frankly, I don't see an offensive line that can get to that second level. And I remember when Nick Chubb was here and when he was toting that rock, it used to make it seem like, man, this offensive line is damn good. And, it's just a complimentary type thing. Now I'm wondering exactly how good was Chubb and how much of their flaws and faults was he making up for? Because to your point, you look around the league just in general, if you don't give a quarterback a running game, they won't have no success. You look at J.J. McCarthy's first start, for example, week 1. For the better part of that game, he did not have a running game. He gets a rushing attack, and then he looks better. Last week, he didn't have a running game again, and we all seen how that played out. So it's one of those things that you most definitely have to have. Just you being around this team for as long as you've been around this team. I mentioned the 8-game losing streak. In my opinion, I think the Browns should have moved on from Kevin Stefanski, last year. Do you feel that the temperature in the locker room is a little different? Do you feel like morale is still high and that he still has the tone of the team, so to speak?
I mean, I'll say like, yeah, it's an 8-game active losing streak, but like it's gonna sound like a little bit of a coach speak, but like last year is last year a bit. Like this is a much different locker room than it was last year. Obviously, some of those vets are here, like Miles and Joe Bitonio, Wyatt Teller, Jack Conklin. But they've got a lot of young guys who like weren't around for last year. Like they're not thinking about last year. Obviously, like the losing has continued, but it's still early, and I wouldn't say that right now. I mean, I would say that you're looking at a team that very well could be 1-1 if their kicker makes a couple kicks and if the receivers catch a couple catches. a couple passes. And if they're 1-1 right now, entering a game against the undefeated Green Bay Packers, what is the narrative? What is the tenor of locally? I think people are like feeling a lot better about things if the record is just like one game, one game in the win column right now, which it very well could have. There are legitimate flaws and things that need to be ironed out right now, but I don't think that I wouldn't say that the temperature is rising right now. We knew that this was going to be a tough stretch. Like it's kind of interesting to see kind of the fan reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Because all throughout the offseason, when they made the moves that they made in the quarterback room, like the kind of prevailing thought was like, oh, this is going to be a little bit of a soft rebuild, a soft reboot, and this offense really isn't going to have much to work with. And then we see the struggle that the offense have had, and people are like yelling and screaming at the top of their lungs. And again, they're fans; they can do whatever they want. I completely understand the emotion, but it's just like we kind of all saw this coming to an extent all throughout the offseason and training camp, and now it's happening. And it's like, well, is what we're seeing on offense much of a surprise? Because the moves that they made or didn't make kind of lent itself to this happening. So I don't know, like, if these people are being surprised, but I don't think they should be much of a surprise. And I do think that this offense can play better, but there was always going to be a hard cap on this offense just because of Joe being 40 years old and, them not having the high-end personnel on the outside and the backfield to really compete with the best teams in the league. I don't think there's really been any surprises so far. If anything, there's been maybe good surprises with the way that the rookies have been playing in big roles through the first 2 weeks of the season.
So for me, and we pre-recorded this, so we won't get an opportunity to see the fans' live reaction. But if I had to just give an answer for what you said of why people might be surprised, I think going through this entire process, you're right. We try to set a very low expectation of what the Cleveland Browns will look like this season, in particular the offense. But we've had so many conversations about, is this a tank year? Or the Browns really trying? And everything that we've been told, from training camp to now, was Joe Flacco gives us the best opportunity to win. And that the reason why Joe Flacco was the starting quarterback was because the Browns was approaching this season with the mindset of, let's go out here and win. You got a half of this fan base who want to see the rookies and Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. You got the other half that's you know what? I do believe in the vet giving us the best chance to win. When we seen how good that defense was able to perform week 1 and in week 2, I think we can all agree, me and you can agree, this is a playoff caliber, maybe a defense right here, right?
Sure.
And so the frustration comes in, well, damn, I got a defense that's kind of better than what my expectations were. The Browns told me that they would start Joe Flacco because he gives us the best chance to win. And yet here we are 2 games in, and we're averaging 16 and a half points a game. So I think I get what you're saying about why are people surprised, but I think it goes week to week, and sometimes with new week or new information, you kind of change your approach. And I just think looking at how good that defense has played over the first 2 weeks of the
Feels like
season,
you're wasting their
they
efforts right now.
wasted
And I completely understand it because they are wasting their efforts. They are wasting their efforts. But again, this offense, I keep on saying, there was always going to be a hard cap on this offense. And this defense was. They dealt with some injuries last year. They weren't perfect last year, but that defense more times than not did enough to keep them in games and to win games. If they had complementary football, and honestly, it's like I wouldn't even put it just on the offense. Like the special teams has not been up to par as well. They've been well below average, which is why I also say I don't think it's just on the offense though. They need to get things together. They've lost collectively through these first 2 weeks. You can't win games, and I say that because the margin for error is so slim for this team.
So small, yeah.
Because of the offensive deficiencies. You can't have 2 missed kicks in a 1-possession game. You can't have a blocked punt that leads to points for the offense when your defense has been playing so well. You can't have that. But I definitely understand that it's when you have the defense that's playing as well as the Browns defense is right now, it feels like it's a waste right now because the offense can't get out of its own way. I completely understand that. But, this offense was never going to be a juggernaut. And I think, for them, the outlook is kind of what Joe said. Like he said, hey, like we've had situations early in my career with the Ravens where like the defense was elite and the offense wasn't lighting the world on fire, but like they just needed to not get in their own way, not turn the ball over, sustain a couple drives, and make sure that like you're not putting the defense behind the 8 ball like you have at times.
So speaking of the defense, we know Myles Garrett been balling through 2 weeks of the season. He hit the ground running. Outside of Myles Garrett, who on the defensive side of the ball have really stood out to you?
I'd say really everybody on the front, like just rewatching the Ravens game, like that like I didn't want to be like hyperbolic, but like I almost wanted to like that was one of like the best like defensive front performances I've seen. Like guys were just penetrating through the backfield, like winning one-on-ones. Like Malik Collins, like there was like a cut up of Malik Collins at pass rush, and he was just having his way with a Pro Bowl All Pro center and Tyler Linderbaum. Mason Graham was looking great. Honestly, like the defensive front has been phenomenal through 2 games. And they're doing it with a secondary and especially a cornerback group that's already their cornerback depth is already a little bit shaky, and it was especially shaky last Sunday with Denzel going out. So that entire front, you look at Carson Swessinger, being the green dot guy, and Devin Bush really being stout against the run. They really like I've almost been like surprised. I mean, I knew that they were going to be really good. I knew they were going to be really good, but they really impressed me throughout these first 2 games.
Moving on, Browns versus Packers this Sunday, Huntington Bank Field. I checked the line before we did our show. There's the information. The game is on Fox at 1:00. The line actually dropped. The Cleveland Browns were 8.5-point underdogs, now down to 7.5-point underdogs. What is the path of victory for the Cleveland Browns? If I said, Daniel, the Cleveland Browns beat the Green Bay Packers if you fill in the blank.
Well, I'll say 2 things on offense. I go back to what I said before. Like they have to be able to run the ball and have some semblance of a run game. That's going to be pretty tough against this Green Bay Packers defense because I think that they're top 2 with the Browns in rushing yards allowed, 7th in run stop win rate. That's going to be really tough, but like that's the only way to keep them out of these these 3rd and long situations where they're not going to be able to consistently block Michael Parsons. On defense, I would say like they've been doing such a great job, but as Miles said, like if you don't win, you didn't do enough, and that there's more that they can do. And I would say like they got to take that next step and they got to force some turnovers. I don't think that they forced a turnover since week 16 of last season. So you go back to 4 straight games with a defense that has a lot of similar faces from last year. They haven't been able to force a takeaway. They haven't lost. They haven't won the turnover battle in the last 9 games. And part of that is because they're not forcing those takeaways on turnovers on a consistent basis. Jordan Love, like he's been kind of streaky in his career, where he'll play really, really well. He's playing really, really well right now. And the Packers haven't turned the ball over in the first 2 games, but he's had some streaks and some consecutive games where he has been prone to turn the ball over. If they're going to win this game, they have to control the time of possession. They have to get some extra possession, some short fields. They can't get into a shootout because they're not built for a shootout. So, again, they got to keep the ball away from the Packers, and then they got to find a way to force some turnovers and really win at the margins. Like I can't remember the last time that the Browns won the margins, where like they had a deep punt return or a deep kick return that set them up, where they forced a fumble on special teams, or you can't miss these kicks. And what I think that this could be a closer game than people think because this defense is playing so well and they're going to be at home. But you can't lose on the margins and then expect to win a game against a team this good. Like with the Bengals, yeah, like you can lose on the margins a little bit, and their defense is so. You play well against their offense. You still keep it a 1-possession game. We saw what happens when you lose the margins against a really, really good to great team in Baltimore last week. You get blown out. So I mean, offense, defense. That's what I would say are the keys to pulling off an upset.
2 more questions with you, Daniel, and we'll get you out of here. The first one, and it relates to this game. Will the Cleveland Browns finally score 20 points in a football game?
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking about that, man. I was like, oof, it's been a minute. Like, it's been a minute.
December 2nd.
I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no. It's like even in like even last week, like it was really like 10 points on the board, and then you kind of have a garbage time drive and to get to 17. Like it's a struggle for them to get near 20. Um, I say no. I think it's going to be a low scoring, a rather low scoring game, but I don't think that this is the week that they do it. I don't think it is.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. I'm starting to reach the point of I have to see it before I come out here and say that it will
Yeah, I
happen.
mean, because my thing is like they've actually been fairly decent at like sustaining drives, but they're just not finishing these drives, and like they don't generate explosive plays at all. So you can't get like kind of I don't want to say like cheap points, but you can't manufacture like these quick drives where you go down the field in 3 plays, 4 plays, and score touchdowns. Like they're not really doing much of anything well right now, which is why I'm just like I don't see a pathway. If they can run the ball consistently and then really sustain these drives, and they've been pretty good on third downs, like if they can do that on Sunday, yeah, like I definitely see a pathway. But right now, it's just one thing or another kind of getting in their way and keeping them from finishing these drives.
As you was talking, and it made me think about something. You're right; they can sustain drives, but they can't finish them. If you even go back to last season, even with the offense being bad last year, the one thing that we could kind of like put money in the bank on was, man, that opening 12 to 15 play scripted drive, the Browns was at least good for 7 first draft drive of the game, and that hasn't even been the case. Which leads me to my last question. Kevin Stefanski has been a huge talking point these last few days. 3-17 in this last 20 games, coach. We just talked about what the points per game is over the 8-game losing streak. So far, they are at 16.5 through 2 games this season. Do you foresee any situation that Kevin Stefanski finds himself on a hot seat? And the reason why I asked that is because Jeremy Fowler was on the radio earlier today, and he said he doesn't see the sense of urgency, and he believed that if Kevin Stefanski was on a hot seat, that the draft this past April would have been approached much differently than what it was.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's really the two decisions that were made this offseason that really told you, at least like at the moment, how ownership viewed things were not trading Miles Garrett when I spoke to people in the organization, and they very well could have traded Miles, and that would have really signaled a rebuild. And the fact that they traded out of the number 2 pick and the opportunity to take Travis Hunter to not only trade back to 5 and get Mason Graham, get a couple additional picks, but get an extra first round pick. Like Jimmy Haslam said, I think that kind of like maybe slipped through the cracks a little bit when Jimmy and D Haslam spoke at the beginning of training camp. But Jimmy said he signed off on that. Like that's the type of move where like you do kind of go to your owner and say like, hey, like you cool with this? Like we're giving up a guy that they said we're giving up the opportunity to draft a guy that people say is generational, to move back a couple spots. And Jimmy said I signed off on that. And again, when you just look at all the comments that he's made recently about giving them time to not only like rebuild the foundation of this team, but to find the quarterback, that doesn't signal that this guy's job is in jeopardy. Now I will say, if the losing streak gets to double digits, and then we're week 7, week 8, they haven't won any games, things can change, emotions can change, attitudes can change. But right now, nothing that the Browns have done, nothing that their ownership has said has signaled that like they have to that their job is in peril. Now again, Jimmy said 3-14 not gonna cut it, and I can tell you 3-14 probably isn't gonna cut it. But I don't think that it's like week to week. The seat is hot right now.
All right, well, there he is, Daniel Oyefusi of ESPN that covers the Cleveland Browns. Bro, every time, man, me and you get to link up and have a conversation, it's a great time. I thank you for your time today, man. Go be great.
Sure, thanks for having me, man.
All right, bro, appreciate you. Shout out to Daniel for joining us, man. That was a fire interview from him. He gave us a lot to kind of like, sit on and ponder on. I think that his last point about Kevin Stefanski was a good one, regardless of the temporary emotion that we have right now, week to week, seeing this offense be horrific and, seeing miscommunication and disconnection between him and the players, a la Dawand Jones saying one thing and he saying another. We're growing more and more frustrated with Kevin Stefanski being the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. But it seems like for once, Jimmy Haslam is not sharing our frustration. Let's talk about the Guardians for 1 second before we get up out of here. Don't forget that the Ultimate 216 show, like the rest of the Ultimate spinoff shows, can be found on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe, smash the like button, tell a friend to tune in Monday through Thursday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. We on that thing on Fridays from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. before we jump on WKYC. All right, man, game 2 of a big series tonight against the Detroit Tigers. We'll have Gavin Williams on the mound against Jack Flaherty. You see the numbers as the season stats for their season stats or whatever the case may be. Here's the wild card standings. The Cleveland Guardians come into tonight 2.5 games behind the Boston Red Sox for one of those wild card spots. And you look at the division, 5.5 back. Couple things that you need to note. The Tigers and the Guardians have split the season series to date, 4 games apiece. This looks like one of those games, man. I believe that the Cleveland Guardians are going to stay hot, continue that momentum, and I believe that ultimately that they will secure a wild card spot. I know for some people that seems a little bit far-fetched. Well, we got 12 games left to go, but the reality is, man, they're peaking at the right time. They are winners of 10 of their last 11, 9 of their last 10, winners of 5 in a row. It seems like that the starting rotation has been phenomenal. And honestly, if you look at their numbers in the last month, I will put our rotation up against anybody else's in the American League. You look at somebody like Bo Naylor, for example, who is batting over 300 in the month of September. He's starting to pull his own weight. Gabriel Arias, who hit a home run yesterday, is starting to contribute. And so guys at the top of the lineup like José Ramírez and Steven Kwan, they are starting to get some help as the Cleveland Guardians close out this season and they try to secure a wild card spot. So drop a 1 in the chat if you think the Cleveland Guardians are going to get that dub tonight. And then drop a 2 in the chat if you're a person that believes that the Guardians are going to secure a wild card spot. Drop a 3 in the chat if you feel like, man, it's over with. This team is just doing what they normally do, showing you a little bit of something at the end of the season. But overall, it is nothing there. Don't forget the Cleveland Guardians take on the Detroit Tigers at 6:40 p.m. Eastern. So 10 minutes after this episode ends, the Guardians are 1.5 run underdogs. The over-under is set at 8. If you're a person that want to kind of put some money on this, man, jump on FanDuel and see what you can get done. Let's get some final thoughts in before I close this show. So earlier today, I seen an article that talked about Cuyahoga County's new jail. Now, for those who are familiar with me and my background, I worked at the Justice Center for about 8 years. I worked for Cuyahoga County for another 1.5 years. I'm very familiar with the Cleveland Municipal Court process, the whole 9 yards. The Justice Center has been one of those buildings that's been downtown for a very long time. Well, news broke that the Cuyahoga County has a $900 million project to build a new Cuyahoga County jail out on Transportation Boulevard. The county plans on breaking ground on this new facility at the end of this year, and it is to be completed in 2029. Why is that important? Because that is the same year that the Cleveland Browns will no longer be playing downtown Cleveland. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because here it is now with the city of Cleveland and the city officials with another opportunity to revitalize and renovate downtown Cleveland. You now have the area in the surrounding land where the Justice Center currently sits that's going to be opening up in a few years. And then, of course, you got the lakefront land. So you got 50 acres on the lakefront. The Justice Center is about a mile away from where the Brown Stadium sit right there. Don't know how many acres that is, but there is a beautiful 5-star hotel that sits right next door. And so when I heard this news, okay, you got the jail leaving, you got the stadium leaving. Now it's time to rethink downtown living. It's time to rethink downtown businesses, and it's time to rethink downtown entertainment. The city has a rare opportunity to improve our lakefront and make this city vibrant for the next generation and generations to come if they actually take their time, properly plan, show some vision, and actually make some moves that will appease the residents of the city of Cleveland. Y'all know the vibes anytime I'm in the building, man. Be great, spread love. Remember, being great come with a price. Spread love is priceless. Next week, Tyvis Powell will be the co-host of the Ultimate 216 show. I can't wait to talk to y'all. Until next time, peace.